Welcome to the DEI podcast and our Associate Spotlight series in honor of AAPI Heritage Month. I'm Helen Ying, a partner in our Los Angeles office and part of our litigation group. I'm so happy to introduce Shing Tse, a senior associate who is also a part of our firm's litigation group. Shing and I are both active in our AAPI employee resource group, and Shing, in fact, leads our AAPI mentoring group. Shing, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Helen. I'm really glad to be here and to get to help honor AAPI Heritage Month.
So Shing, let's talk a little bit about yourself. Could you share with us your story and the path that led you to law?
My path to becoming a lawyer was mostly by happenstance, and I really just kind of stumbled into being a lawyer. So growing up, I never even thought about being a lawyer. No one in my family is a lawyer, and we didn't know any lawyers. Our entire perception of lawyers was based on the criminal defense lawyers we saw on the Chinese TV soap operas. So naturally, no one in my family ever encouraged me to go to law school. Not surprisingly, they wanted me to become a doctor or an engineer. By the time I got to college, I was convinced that I was going to be an engineer.
That's so funny because that's also the way that I was brought up. And in my community, there's always been a very big push into medicine and engineering, basically professions that don't require a lot of speaking. Just put your head down and do the work.
That's exactly right. And having grown up in Oklahoma, it was mostly a foregone conclusion that I would stay in Oklahoma and ultimately work in the oil and gas industry. So I was initially, believe it or not, a petroleum engineering major. But I immediately realized that it wasn't for me. So I switched to getting a business degree. About partway through, I realized that I didn't really like any of the job prospects from the degree and spoke with one of my professors about it. And he suggested that I go to law school. That never crossed my mind before, but that's really how I got here today.
And now you've been with the firm for almost 6 years. And you started with us in litigation. So let's talk a little bit about being a litigator. What drew you to litigation?
I, again, kind of stumbled into litigation. During law school, I, along with a lot of my other classmates, were mostly interested in doing corporate transactional work. The idea of working towards a common goal rather than being adversaries was really appealing to me.
Me too.
And it was also a plus that I wouldn't have to argue in front of a judge or a jury or anything like that. So that was a big plus in my book. But in summer during law school, I had the chance to summer at a general counsel's office of a government agency where I got some exposure to both transactional work and some litigation work. I got to do everything from drafting agreements and policies to helping with researching and drafting briefs in lawsuits and anticipated litigation. And it was then at that point that I realized that my skill set was better suited for litigation. And I also enjoyed it way more. I found some of the transactional work to be pretty boring. No offense to the transactional lawyers who are listening.
That's a really thoughtful response, Shing. For me, I joined litigation for one reason only, because Adam Fox told me to. Now that you've been a litigator for going on 8 years, what are some of the highlights from that journey? Are there any memorable moments or success stories you can share with us?
One of the things that I, like many other Asian Americans, struggle with is imposter syndrome. Literally every milestone in my career has been memorable for me, as each of these moments have helped me to combat these feelings of imposter syndrome. So everything from getting into my top choice law school to graduating to winning my first summary judgment motion, all those wins are memorable in my mind.
Based on what I've experienced with you, you really need to shed the imposter syndrome because you're the real deal.
Well, thanks.
In fact, you're the head of our AAPI mentoring group, as I mentioned earlier. You're the only associate in our employee resource group that has a leadership role in the group. Why did you decide to take on this leadership role as mentorship lead?
It's because I know how important it is and how important mentorship has been for my career trajectory. As I've grown through the firm, one of the things I've come to learn is that it's really important to gain visibility, both within the firm and outside of it. So beyond just doing high quality work, you being associates, need some or several people within the firm to advocate on your behalf and to help you get exposure within the firm. Having a good mentor is also really helpful to get advice from and learn from as you think about the next stages of your career. In my opinion, having a strong mentors has been the single most important thing in my progression at the firm. So shout out to Katrina McDaniel and you. But I realized that it may be difficult for some associates, especially those who may be in smaller offices like myself, to have an opportunity to connect with and develop relationships with strong mentors. So the mentorship committee is a way for AAPI associates to get an opportunity to develop these mentor-mentee relationships with some of the most important people at the firm and to help gain visibility within the firm.
Well, thank you for all that you do within our employee resource group. I agree with you that mentorship is something that is tremendously important to the development and progression of any associate at our firm, and in particular within our AAPI employee resource group. Oftentimes on our group calls, we find some silence, and that brings me to something that we've spoken about a bit in private, which is the role of Asian Americans in the law. A very prominent study by the American Bar Foundation and the National Asian Pacific American Bar Association, or what's referred to as NAPABA, has had several iterations released of their very prominent study. And that study is called A Portrait of Asian Americans, which made some very sobering findings about Asian Americans at law firms. So what they found is that Asian Americans are the largest minority group at major law firms, but have the highest attrition rates and the lowest ratio of partners to associates. Why do you think that is?
A really good question. So I've had the opportunity to attend APABA for the last couple of years and was a member of the LCLD's Pathfinders program. So through those events, I've met a ton of Asian American lawyers from around the country. And a frequent topic of discussion is how difficult it is for AAPI lawyers to get promoted to management positions. And that's true both at law firms, large and small, and in-house. One of the reasons we've come up with in our discussions is that it might be due to a misperception that Asian Americans are often viewed as kind of the quote model minority and are also going to be more docile and passive and have a weaker personality, which may lead to a mistaken belief that we wouldn't do well in these leadership roles. And this lead to a mistaken belief that we're good workers, but not necessarily good leaders. So the hope is that the DEI efforts of firms and companies across the country that are becoming more and more prominent will help to combat these implicit biases that Asian American lawyers are facing and have faced for however long now. The current and future generations of AAPI lawyers will have more equal opportunity at being promoted beyond just the junior levels.
Thanks for that, Shing. I think that that's a very true and reoccurring theme I see in the AAPI community. And for me personally, the first 3 or 4 years at the firm, I could only refer to any partner as Mr. or Mrs. I refused to call them by anything else. I couldn't even look at anyone in the face. And culturally, I was brought up to respect authority, to not question authority, and to keep my head down.
You're certainly not like that now. I will say that you are one of the most outgoing and personable lawyers I know, both at this firm and
Okay, all
outside
right.
the firm.
Moving on. Outside of your professional life, what are some of your interests or hobbies?
Outside of work, with the abundant amount of time that we have, when I'm not spending time with my wife and our two cats, you can find me in a heated game of pickleball against the 70-year-old ladies who play at my club. Pickleball is a ton of fun, great exercise, and an awesome way to meet new people. It's not surprising that I've quickly become addicted to it, just like the rest of the country. But luckily, being a lawyer has paid off so far because I'm constantly having to buy new gear just to keep up with Mildred and Margaret at the courts. And that certainly gets expensive. Interestingly enough, though, only one of us wears knee braces when we play. And it's probably not who you think. And I'll give you a hint. It's me.
I'm really trying to picture you playing pickleball with knee braces and 70-year-old ladies. It's interesting, Shing.
It's a weekly event.
While you probably have a lot of advice about pickleball, what advice would you give to young AAPI individuals aspiring to enter the legal field?
Best advice I have would be to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And this is something I still struggle with. From my experience, the biggest opportunities for growth you have in this field is when you're outside of your comfort zone. That includes everything from taking on a new task that you haven't done before, or learning about an area of law that you're not familiar with, or even going out to network with others whenever you're tired or don't particularly feel like it. All of these uncomfortable situations will help shape your career and ultimately help you become a better lawyer.
I could not agree more. Well, thank you for that, Shing. And as we bring our series to a close, I want to thank Shing for his invaluable contributions to our firm and for leading the way in mentorship within the AAPI community at our firm. To anyone listening, thank you for engaging with us throughout this series. Thank you for celebrating AAPI Heritage Month by continuing to support the diversity that strengthens our firm. If you would like to be involved with our AAPI resource group, please do reach out to the Office of DEI.